Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone to the Planning Advisory Board meeting. It's November 9th. It's 6:02, and we're going to start the meeting at this time. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda.
I motion to approve the agenda.
Second,
Second, this is Dawn.
all in favor? Yay?
Yay.
Yay.
Yay. Any nays? The agenda is approved. We'll move forward to the minutes. Were there any questions on the minutes that were sent out from Jessica? No questions? So I need a motion to approve the minutes.
I
Move we
to-
approve the minutes as presented.
Okay, second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
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 Any nays? The minutes are approved as they were sent out. So we'll bring up the Office of Budget. They're going to give us a presentation tonight on 3 different items.
Thank you. If I may share my screen. My name is Naomi McAllister. I am the Capital Budget Analyst for Anne Arundel County Office of Budget. And I'm here to present to you this evening a request for recommendation on an ordinance concerning supplemental appropriation related to the fiscal year 23 approved capital budget and program, the E-Class capital projects, specifically Board of Education. This request is comprised of 4 grants related to the capital projects, security-related upgrades. First of all, I just want to confirm that you can see my screen. Okay,
Yes.
great. Security-related upgrades from the School Safety Grant Program totaling $792,000. We have capital project maintenance backlog from the Anchor Customer Grant Program totaling $1.25 million. Capital project roof replacement from the Healthy School Facility Fund totaling $1.21 million. And capital project upgrade various schools related to the Decarbonizing Public Schools pilot program totaling $82,000. The total supplemental request for this evening is $3.34 million. I do want to let you know that I do have Matt Stansky with us here today from Anne Arundel County Public Schools. He is the Chief Operating Officer, and I do have Kyle Roof. I hope I said your name correctly. He is the Director of Facilities, should you have questions related to these grants. At this time, I would open it up.
Okay, thank you. I know there were some questions that we had concerning the decarbonization and the net zero. Does anybody want to expand on that before the board asks their questions?
I can field some of the questions that were asked. So the approach to the decarbonization grant is that we're going to look at our 3 prototype designs for middle, elementary, and high schools. And we're going to look at the design standards as well as the layout of those schools to determine what alterations or changes need to be made to reach the net zero requirements. And those include energy modeling, reviewing the existing sites in our inventory, looking at material and equipment selection, and then also understanding the contractual and budgetary impacts of going to net zero.
So is this, hi, I'm Melanie Hartwick Davis, and I am the one who sent that email to give you guys a little bit of a heads up that I was going to want some more detail. So am I understanding then this is for, sorry, I'm just so taking notes and also listening, but this is for all the new, you mentioned the prototypes. So this is just for the new construction, or was the second item about existing and conversion? Just
our main purpose is to look at the replacement schools, but we are, a second tier of this grant is also to look at renovation addition projects and how that could be impacted with net zero design guidelines.
Okay, and then some of my additional questions were, this is an $82,000 grant from MEA. Is that enough to cover the cost of the study, or will the school system be supplementing in any way? And what is the timeline on that?
We do not need any supplemental funding. The grant will cover all the expenses of the consultant services. The timeline is the final grant will be completed, or the closeout document will be completed December 2023. So over the next 9 months, our consultant is going to be looking at our physical inventory, running some energy models on the 3 prototype schools, and then providing us some recommendations for improved design standards and strategies to implement.
And has that consultant been selected, or is that still going out? How does that get selected? How does that person get selected? Or
we have a short list of consultants that we choose from. This consultant that we're going to be using has prior experience with our LEED Silver schools and then also net zero experience.
Okay. I think that answers all of my questions on that. I certainly do commend, the goal and the effort. So I look forward to hearing, what the results of that are.
Thank you.
Okay, Melanie, you also had a question about the natural gas conversion. Can you expand on that?
I can, yes, thank you. So the MEA grant 22-03-52-3S1, the Anchor Customer Grant program that is going to be, is proposed to be implemented to convert basically 7 of our schools from oil to the natural gas. And I definitely, again, commend the effort to get off of dirty oil. I think, however, that the program, when it originated in 2018, was a little short-sighted and didn't foresee the urgency of the need to truly detach our systems and our portfolio from fossil fuels. So as I mentioned, I have a real issue of approving grant, putting my star of approval on this for going to natural gas. I'd like to know what the opportunity is for this to go straight to electrification.
So AACPS currently has about 30 sites that primarily use number 2 heating oil as the heating source. Although natural gas is not a net zero option, it is cleaner than burning the number 2 fuel oil. Some statistics from the U.S. Energy Information Administration notes that about 117 pounds of CO2 are produced per million British thermal units equivalent of natural gas, compared to more than 160 pounds for number 2 fuel oil. So it is a cleaner alternative to fuel oil, but it is not the net zero option that you're looking for.
Right, and it locks the school system in, of course, to a life expectancy of 20 to 30 years of using that natural gas, which is not going to help in our existing buildings to meet our net zero goals, which of course the decarbonization grant is pilot program is trying to help us get to. So what opportunities are there? I understand the statistics. I know that it is, natural gas is cleaner than oil. Hands down. But why invest our state tax dollars and our county efforts to create a situation where we're locked in either for 20 to 30 years contributing to climate change, or we spend more money at a sooner time when, some of the next grant that's going to come out is going to be to electrify our natural gas.
So many of the schools that are going to be impacted with this grant money are older schools in our fleet and our inventory. We don't, the life expectancy is probably not 20 to 30 years for each one of these buildings that's going to get retrofitted from fuel oil to natural gas. This is a alternative that gets us off of the fuel oil pipeline and the trucking that is required to maintain these schools' heating capacity. As you may know, fuel oil is at a premium this winter, and supplies are short. So we anticipate that to be continue in the future, and this will provide us an alternative to being stuck in that situation.
What is the expected timeline for the completion of the transition of these 7 schools?
I believe the grant has a timeline of 2023 or 2024.
So Melanie, I do have a question for you. What if we don't transfer over to natural gas? What would be another viable option?
So it's to install systems that are run by electricity and not natural gas.
So
I mean,
heat pumps or?
Heat pumps, yeah. I mean, I don't know the exact situation of the schools, but assumedly it would be heat pumps. Is that right, sir? I'm speaking without knowing the school buildings, but yeah.
Yeah, it would require heat pumps or different types of units that would run off of electricity rather than fuel oil or natural gas. It should be noted that most of our new schools also run on natural gas. A few of them are geothermal, which would include the heat pump system. Heat pumps take up more space inside the building. As mentioned, these are older buildings. Retrofitting a building to both be have a thermal envelope that will maintain the energy requirements for heat pump system is beyond kind of the scope of work for this particular grant.
I'd like to make another comment, and we'll circle back to that, but I'd ask Elizabeth, since she's not here, for any comments that she would like to put out there. And she did send one back, so I'm going to quote her on this for our other PAB members. Elizabeth said, "Thanks for asking. A few thoughts." Quote, "First, under item number 4, IAC states that all lead remediation projects are deferred because of lack of supporting documents. I am shocked the Board of Education failed to submit what was required when applying. Does this mean that they will come back to us again? I agree with Melanie, and I write natural gas and getting away from it is my feeling. Is it even possible to run a geothermal school? Are there any geothermal schools in the county currently or on the horizon? What does it take to convert from oil to geothermal? I approve the minutes and thank for the opportunity." End of quote. So that was Elizabeth's comment. So can we talk about that geothermal?
Sure. So geothermal, we have 2 schools currently under construction right now that are going to be geothermal. They are Rippling Woods Elementary School and the Old Mill South Middle School. Rippling Woods will come online for next school year, and then the Old Mill Middle School South will come online in 24-25 school year. We also have some hybrid geothermal schools, including Severno Park has wells, and then also Piney Orchard.
Melanie,
Yes,
more
sir.
comments?
So I guess I'd really like to hear and know that the school system, and I'm disappointed to hear that our new schools are all set. So our prototypes are listing natural gas. Is it, do I understand that correctly? That all of our prototype schools are designed to facilitate use natural gas as their energy? Is that right?
No, our first option is always geothermal for our prototype schools. We look at the site conditions, how big the sites are, what it can support, how it's going to be used in the future, athletic field placement, to determine whether geothermal is an option or not. The second option is to go to natural gas, and that's primarily what we've been using as our prototype designs.
There's not a step between geothermal to natural gas?
Our primary heating source for most of the prototype schools is natural gas.
I sure wish you had a breakdown of the cost to convert from oil to natural gas, and then a cost comparing that from oil to electric, and then also oil to geothermal.
I don't have those statistics offhand. I can tell you that the grant for 1.2 will help us convert about 7 schools, whereas if we went with geothermal wells, that cost would be consumed quite a lot in one building just to get the wells in place.
Mhm. Okay, any other board members have questions?
This is Dawn. I share the concerns for sure. And, I just, again, have the same questions about are there any options at this point? Are there options to evaluate geothermal or heat pumps or electrification, or is that not even an option? Are there studies that can be done, or or is it just a yes or no at this point?
At this point, this money is primarily being supported by the state grant funds. Any additional studies or construction costs would have to be contributed by local funds, which we do not have available or assigned to this project.
Got it.
Is it expected that there would be another round of, is MEA going to continue with these natural gas grants specifically? I guess is one question. And is the 7 schools being converted to natural gas? You mentioned the economics of it, and I understand natural gas versus the geothermal and drilling the wells for the geothermal costs. For these 7 schools, can you tell us how many of the schools the situation on site specifically is conducive to geothermal, but we're just using natural gas from a cost perspective and because we have this grant, versus these schools are not cited where geothermal is feasible at all, and this is really the only way to improve our situation from oil?
So it's hard to say which sites are most conducive to the geothermal. We usually do a test well out there to determine the depth and what kind of underground environment that we have to support the geofield. That'll determine the number of wells, how big of a field we have to have. So it's hard to say on that. As far as an economic standpoint, each one of the schools, to convert them from oil to natural gas, you're looking around $250,000. And that's where the economics come in on this particular grant. The timeline horizon for this takes us out to December 24 is when the grant ends. At that point in time, I'm sure the grant will expire and they'll probably be looking at alternatives, as you mentioned before.
I'll comment. Since we're not asked to, at this point, we're able to redraw the grant and be more specific about other possibilities. And Melanie, I know you don't support it fully, but it does seem like at this point, this is the better of all evils, in the sense that it's either we do it or we don't.
Mhm.
So.
Mhm. As far as the Planning Advisory Board voting on this measure, Naomi, maybe you can speak to this. Do we vote for all four at one time, or is this an individual, each grant gets a vote?
This is one vote for all four.
And Melanie, I know you voiced your concerns and are not in support of the natural gas changeover. And I don't, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to. We have other members on the board. If they feel that they want to do other things, it's not, if you got to voice your opinion. That's why we're a board.
Yeah.
So I understand very much.
Right.
Is there any other board members that have any other comments?
Is
If
there
not-
any way, I'm sorry, is there any way that that you can separate it where it doesn't have to be decided upon altogether in one vote, since you are looking for more information, or is there a timeline that you?
So the
Does it have-
legislation is being drafted as one ordinance. So at this particular juncture, it would be one vote for the PAB. I could certainly look into what it would take to carve it out and draft separate legislation, but of course that would push this out considerably on the council calendar.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
And then there's a timeline in which this grant, that it'll end, right? So, yeah. So,
Yes, yes.
Yeah, this is a one-shot deal. It's a grant, or four different grants, and if we don't take advantage of those grants, they're gone.
yeah, I would say take advantage of them.
So,
So,
Dawn, do you have any other comments or questions?
No, again, I have concerns, but I don't know that I would oppose the entire package for that, but it's certainly something to think about moving forward, I would hope.
Certainly. If nobody else, I want to make sure I have the opportunity to ask the questions about the roof replacement, Chair, if we're ready to move to that particular grant.
Okay, are we done with the natural gas discussion?
yeah.
Okay, roof replacement. Melanie?
Thank you.
Comments?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so just some more information about, as the investment is being made, how are we maximizing that investment for our school system and our taxpayers? Have studies been done on the structural integrity of the roof system beyond the burr roofing? And is there an opportunity for solar to go on these roofs once these upgrades are made? And those questions there, I think those are the two that the primary two on the roofing.
Sure. So the scope of work for this particular grant did not include a study of rooftop solar. The roof being replaced under the funding source is Woodside Elementary School. It's approximately 35,500 square feet of roofing area that will be replaced, and is over top structural elements from 1965. In addition to that, it has numerous rooftop obstructions, including air handlers that would make effective solar array layout limited. As you can understand, structural design in 1965 didn't include the same load factors that we include today on our new designs. So the existing low slope roof at Woodside Elementary School is a gravel surface build-up roof over insulation that does not meet current energy standards. The roofing system is over 29 years old and has reached the end of its expected life. The replacement roof will improve the energy efficiency of the building by installing a tapered insulation with an R factor of 30.
Okay, thank you. That's good information. Is there, and I understand completely that the grant doesn't provide for a solar study, but it's been my understanding from other meetings with the school system that solar studies have been done on a number of the schools. Is there a process where there's a kind of standard operating procedure, if you will, that as you are redoing if you're doing any roof work, you also, pull up that report, or that report is done? And I understand the grant doesn't cover it, but it doesn't take a lot. There are a lot of solar companies out here that do that solar study at no cost to the school system. So can you tell me, is the school system being assertive in that outside of the grant funding?
Sure. So our primary focus with our solar rooftop studies is the replacement schools. So Old Mill West, the 3 triplet schools, Quarterfield, Rippling Woods, Hillsmere, and then also the middle school that's being constructed right now, as well as future schools under construction or under design. Our goal is to do 40% rooftop solar. So we try to make these schools rooftop solar ready. So that includes not only laying out future solar arrays on top of the roof, making sure that rooftop penetrations, rooftop units are aligned so that they allow the greatest maximum solar array possible, given the constraints that we have on the building. In addition, we look at the electrical setup to make sure that future raceways for the converters are in place, so that when the time comes to convert these buildings or get a power purchase agreement, that they are ready to roll.
And that's good to hear. When you say 40% rooftop solar, is that 40% of the roof that's going on the school as designed, or 40% of the schools would get solar? Can you clarify that, please?
It's 40% of the roof area.
Roof area. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the roof replacement? Board members, are there any other questions?
No, I don't have any.
If no other questions, I would like a recommendation. A motion to approve these 4 projects in the amount of $3,334,000. Any motions?
I motion to approve it.
I need a second motion.
I'll second.
Dawn, okay, thank you. So there's a motion on the floor to approve these projects, project 38-100, 38-300, 38-400, and 39-100, for the amount of $3,334,000. All in favor? Aye.
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 Nays?
Can I abstain?
And 1 abstain.
Thank you.
The motion has approved. Okay, thank you, and thank you, board, for the really great discussions and questions. Next, we're going to move on to our annual measures and indicators report. And that is being presented from the Office of Planning and Zoning. Is Christina, is she doing that, or?
Chair
Is Mark-
Kurtz, Mark Burt's going to be doing the presentation, but I'm here.
Okay, great. Hello.
Good evening. If I may share my screen.
Welcome, Mark, and thank you for your presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Okay. And let me know if you can see the opening slide.
We can
Yep.
see it.
Great, thank you. Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm Mark Burt, Planning Administrator for the Research and GIS section within the Office of Planning and Zoning. Tonight, I'm here to present the findings of the Annual Development Measures and Indicators Report for calendar year 2021. The Annual Development Measures and Indicators Report is required under law, the Land Use Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland. The statute requires local planning commissions to prepare an annual report that addresses growth development by reporting comprehensive planning and zoning changes, growth-related infrastructure improvements, and development in various stages of completion. Section 1-207B of the Maryland Land Use Article requires that each county or municipality planning commission or board approve an annual report for the reporting year. In addition, the annual report must be filed with the Anne Arundel County Council and the Maryland Department of Planning. The amendments and growth-related changes in development patterns section provides an overview of any significant changes in development patterns or programs and policies that impact development patterns. So under comprehensive plan or plan elements, the Anne Arundel County Council adopted the comprehensive plan, Plan 2040, in May of 2021. Plan 2040 was developed through an extensive public engagement period over 3 years and continues Anne Arundel County's growth management policies of promoting development in specified targeted areas, conserving in rural land and environmentally sensitive areas, and supporting existing neighborhoods. There were 3 zoning map amendments in calendar year 2021. A table of the zoning amendment, administrative zoning amendments can be found in table 1.1-1 on page 3 of the report. There were 28 zoning text amendments in calendar year 2021. A summary of the zoning text amendments can be found on pages 3 through 5 of the report. There were 2 changes requested to the priority funding areas or PFAs in calendar year 2021. One request was for the Two Rivers planned unit development area to be included, and the other was for a 22-acre area along Brock Bridge Road. These will be pursued in future years depending on changes during region plan comprehensive zoning and pending changes to the water and sewer service area. I would like to say that the request for the Two Rivers planned development unit or planned unit development was accepted by Maryland Department of Planning this couple weeks ago. So in calendar year 2022. So there were no water and sewer master plan amendments in calendar year 2021 due to the triennial update of the water and sewer master plan that was underway in 2021. As a note, the triennial update was adopted by County Council in this year and will be referenced in next year's annual report. There were 8 major transportation projects completed in calendar year 2021. A list and description of the major transportation projects can be found on pages 6 and 7 of the report. In calendar year 2021, there were 4 completed school improvement projects, adding capacity to accommodate an additional 623 students. So now we're into the main part of the presentation here. So jurisdictions are required to produce a report of development activity for the previous calendar year that are being adopted by planning commissions and filed with local legislative body. The annual report also examines and reports on several measures and indicators. The measures and indicators section is required for jurisdictions that issue more than 50 residential permits for the calendar year of the report. In addition, Anne Arundel County has set a goal of 80% of new development to occur within the priority funding area. So in calendar year 2021, Anne Arundel County issued 1,835 residential building permits. 64% were inside the priority funding area. 78 commercial building permits were issued, 90% of which were inside the priority funding area. These numbers vary year to year, but the 5-year average for new residential permits inside the PFA is 72%. So displayed here is a heat map of the density of commercial and residential building permits issued in calendar year 2021. The gray areas on the map are the priority funding areas. Areas of yellow on the map are areas with the highest density of permits issued. You can see higher density at the Two Rivers Planned Unit Development, Watershed, and Parkside developments, around the intersection of Maryland 170 and Maryland 100, and the Tanyard area, which includes Tanyard Cove, Tanyard Shores, and Tanyard Springs. So the majority of residential development that was built in Anne Arundel County occurred inside the county's PFA. Like stated before, 60% of the residential building permits issued were inside the PFA, and approximately 61% of residential units constructed were within the PFA. 98% of approved residential lots were within the county's priority funding area within 11 subdivisions. Although the number of residential permits within the PFA was below the 80% goal, like stated earlier, the Two Rivers PUD has been recently added into the PFA. This will result in an increase in the number of residential permits issued within the PFA in coming years. Although the county does not have a way to specifically track redevelopment in its building permit database, the number of residential demolition permits issued can be an indicator of possible areas of redevelopment. In calendar year 2021, there were a total of 28 residential demolition permits issued. 61% were inside the priority funding area. The following slides will take a closer look at some residential development measures and indicators. So there was close to a 12% decline in building permits issued in 2021. Like stated before, 64% of the 1,835 new residential permits issued were inside the priority funding area, which falls short of the county's 80% goal for new development to occur within the PFA. The 5-year average for new residential building permits issued within the PFA currently stands at 72%. The net density of development inside the priority funding area is 22.9 dwelling units per acre. And that's looking at the lot size in acres for that development. This calculation just reflects those residentially developed parcels. If the density is calculated on the gross acres of subdivisions, the density calculation yields 11.8 dwelling units per acres. Approximately 61% of the 2,329 units constructed in calendar year 2021 were inside the priority funding area. Over the last 5 years, the number of units constructed has been steady, although there was around a 2% decrease in the number of units constructed from 2020 to 2021. So we're going to take a look now at the amount, density, and share of growth for non-residential growth in the county. The majority of non-residential growth in Anne Arundel County was located within the priority funding areas. 90% of the non-residential permits were issued were inside the PFA, and 100% of the non-commercial lots were approved within the PFA. And when I say non-commercial, I meant non-residential lots were approved within the 100% were approved within PFA. And when I say non-residential, it could be commercial, something that's has a commercial use, an industrial use. So like stated, 90% of the industrial commercial and industrial building permits issued by the county were inside the PFA. There was approximately a 218% increase in the number of non-residential building permits issued from 2020 to 2021. 100% of the non-residential permits issued in calendar year 2021 were within the PFA. There were 4 more non-residential lots approved in calendar year 21 than in 2020. The gross commercial building square footage approved for calendar year 2020 or 2021 was 100,043 square feet, all within the PFA. There was a 65% decrease in the gross commercial building square footage approved from 2021. This is a steep decline, although looking at previous years, the commercial building square footage approved within the PFA for calendar years 2017 to 2018 decreased 7.9%, and there was a 33.9% decrease from calendar year 2018 to calendar year 2019. There were 2 new areas of preserved land in calendar year 2021 under the county's Agricultural and Woodland Preservation Program, totaling 121 acres. This addition brought the county's total preserved acreage to 14,083. This includes Mouth, Rural Legacy, and the county's Agricultural and Woodland Preservation Program. Anne Arundel County maintains and updates a residential development capacity analysis. The purpose of estimating holding capacity is to find all vacant and underdeveloped land in Anne Arundel County and calculate the number of possible buildable units in all vacant and redevelopable lots in the county based on existing zoning. The analysis indicates that there is the potential capacity for an additional 13,135 housing units in the county, with the majority of the capacity being in higher density priority funding areas. Anne Arundel County's Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance seeks to enable the county to provide adequate public schools, roads, and other infrastructure facilities in a timely manner and achieve general development plan growth and objectives. It applies to water and sewage, roads, schools, and other infrastructure. Each project that goes through the development process is tested for each of these APFO standards. The only APFO restrictions that are in place for current development projects are related to schools. For the restricted projects, projects remain on a waiting list until capacity is available or 6 years has lapsed, whichever comes first. In addition, there are upcoming capital improvement projects to relieve capacity constraints. The schools currently affected by APFO restrictions are listed in the tables of Bill number 113-21, Subdivision and Development, Adequate Public Schools Facilities, School Utilization Chart. The bill was approved and enacted on January 6, 2022, and went into effect on January 12, 2022. In the current school utilization chart, 6 high schools are closed to development. These include Annapolis, Broadneck, Crofton, Glen Burnie, and Old Mill High Schools. Anne Arundel and Crofton Middle Schools are also close to development. There are a total of 31 elementary schools that are currently closed. 4 elementary schools in the Crofton and North County feeder districts, 3 elementary schools in the Annapolis, Arundel, Broadneck, Meade, and Old Mill feeder districts, 2 elementary schools in the Glen Burnie, Northeast, and Severna Park feeder districts, and one elementary school is closed in the South River and Southern feeder districts. And we'll get into some growth trends. So Anne Arundel County is located within the Baltimore metropolitan region. The county has seen steady population growth over the last several decades. Market conditions in this region affect how the county grows. These market forces greatly impact what type of development occurs and when. While market conditions will always play a role, growth is also affected by current policies and regulations that are in effect. So according to the U.S. Census Bureau, Anne Arundel County's population grew by 97% between 1970 and 2020. The county experienced higher growth rates in the decades of the 1970s, which saw a 15.23 increase, and the 1980s, which saw a 14.61 increase. In the most recent decade, from 2010 to 2020, the population growth rate stands at 9.4%. So there were a total of 503 residential final plans approved in Anne Arundel County since 2011 that could be mapped. 61% of these plans were located within the priority funding area. The distribution of projects by year for the last decade shows that there was only 1 year where there were more projects outside the PFA than inside the PFA, and that year was 2020. There were a total of 16,171 new lots approved through the final plat process in the last 10 years. 74% of new lots approved since 2011 were inside the priority funding area. There were 18,746 new units approved since 2011. 75% were within the PFA. Between 2001 and 2021, the county has issued a total of 51,158 residential building permits. The year with the highest number of building permits issued was 2005, with 3,684 permits issued. In 2008 and 2009, the number of new building permits dropped significantly. This is coincident with the Great Recession that impacted the economy across the United States. It also coincides with a slower growth policy in Anne Arundel County in response to rapid growth in the county over the previous years. Since 2009, the number of new residential building permits has fluctuated, but has generally increased over the last 10 years. In 2021, the county issued 1,835 residential building permits, which was a decrease from 2020. It is also important to look at the type of residential permits that have been issued over the last 20 years. Overall, the majority of the total building permits issued were single-family detached units, with approximately 80% of all issued residential building permits. Multifamily permits made up 28% of the total, and townhomes made up 25% of the total issued residential permits. Between 2010 and 2017, the trend was towards more multifamily and townhouse permits issued than single-family residential. Since 2018, the trend has shifted towards more single-family residential and townhouse permits than multifamily permits within the with the exception of 2019. So in conclusion, the Anne Arundel County's pattern of development remains consistent with its plans and programs as well as its smart growth goals. The indicators for 2021 illustrate that these patterns show that the majority of development is located within existing water and sewer infrastructure and the priority funding area. Indicators also indicate the county's strong position in continuing to preserve valuable farmland and natural resource areas. Anne Arundel County's APFO for schools has resulted in several areas of the county being temporarily closed to development, which helps ensure that there is school capacity for new development within the county. Since 2010, the number of lots and units approved through preliminary, sketch, modification to skip sketch process peaked in 2014. The number of lots approved, the number of approved lots has been in decline since then, with a 42% decrease overall in the units approved from 2020 to 2021. The vast majority of lots and units subdivided in the county over the last decade have been approved inside of the priority funding area. There have been just over 51,000 residential building permits issued in Anne Arundel County since 2001. Total permits dipped in 2009, then increased to 2019, and have seen a decrease since then. And the population of the county has steadily increased and nearly doubled since 1970. So thank you for your attention, and I'll take any questions you have.
Mark, thank you for your presentation. Very informative. I have one question and then I'll open it up to the board. On the 6-year wait list, is there a way the public can find
The document that okay, got that announcement there. Okay, there is a list of developments that is produced by the Office of Planning and Zoning that gets posted on the I believe gets posted on the web, so for people to go and view.
Okay, thank you.
We definitely have it. I'm going to drop a link into the chat for you.
Thank you.
And it was just updated as of November 4, 2022. And this is Christina Pompa from the Office of Planning and Zoning.
Thank you, Christina. Okay, board members, questions?
I have some.
Okay.
If you'll let me go first, I think I have something. I want to go big or go bold. So this entire presentation was on PFAs. And we have some newer board members, and I always like to be reminded, and I always have more questions about this. Can you give us a dissertation on PFAs? How are they chosen? Who chooses them? How do you get off of one? How do you get on one? How often are they altered? How often does that happen? I mean, if you could kind of give us a really good sense. I mean, this whole thing is on PFAs. Who cares? What's PFA?
This is
Can I just
Christina.
piggyback on that,
Sure.
Melanie, because that was going to be my question as like a relatively new person. Is my big question is, you know, how do non-PFA developments get approved? What do they have to do to get around that barrier? So I appreciate the big picture stuff.
Well, this is Christina Pompa with the Office of Planning and Zoning. The priority funding areas are something that the state of Maryland enacted, and it's really about trying to have growth located in areas that have existing infrastructure. So existing sewer, water, and schools. And Maryland prefers to fund projects that are in priority funding areas. So our growth policies in the county really are about trying to direct growth into those priority funding areas. And it dovetails with some of our other policies in relation to, let's say, agricultural preservation. You know, that's one reason why South County is going to stay rural. One is it's very expensive to extend infrastructure into those areas, but also we want those areas to be more rural in nature. So that's why there's a big focus on development happening in the priority funding areas. Now, we mentioned the Two Rivers planned unit development. A planned unit development in this county is it's a special project that goes through a unique approval process that allows for density that may not match zoning. So and I don't know all the history. I've been in this county for 3 years, and I don't know the whole story. If we had Cindy Carrier here, she could probably do a dissertation. But there was a decision made to go ahead and grant the Two Rivers planned unit development. It was not in a priority funding area. So the problem is we've had a lot of growth in that area, and we didn't necessarily have the infrastructure. But in order to get help in funding the infrastructure that we need, we really needed to make it a PFA. So this year, we're telling you that the number of building permits issued, we only had 64% within the PFA. Many of those issued in Two Rivers. But now we had asked for an amendment of the state for that area to be added as a priority funding area. And there are criteria that have to be met in order to do that. And we can certainly in another meeting give you more information or send you written information if you would like. But the state of Maryland did determine that Two Rivers met the criteria for becoming a priority funding area, and we are currently in the process of changing the mapping. So next year, as we continue to issue building permits in Two Rivers, you will see an increase in the percentage of permits issued in a PFA because the PFA got amended. Generally, you want the development to come to the PFA. You don't want the PFA to come to the development, so to speak, which is what happened with Two Rivers. But sometimes it does happen that way. If Mark were to put the PFA map back up on the screen, you would see that the large majority is located in North County in areas where you would expect where public services are available.
Thank you, Christina. I appreciate that. If I can, I guess, have any PFA areas been removed? I mean, is there like a, the county petitions the state to make it an area a PFA, and then say the county finishes whatever that goal was with that funding, do areas come off as PFAs, and what does that process look like?
I am not aware that an area would want to come out of a PFA. I mean, that's something I will have to look into that for you.
And remember, Melanie, that this is Mike Stringer, senior planner, that the PFA system is set up as a financial incentive for smart growth and compact development. So many of the state grants and resources for local governments are tied to PFA. So to get funding for a school, to get funding for a road improvement project from the state, they want you to be in that PFA. So once you do have that infrastructure and you're in, it's still, a strong incentive for it to be maintained in. So that way, when you need to upgrade that school, upgrade that water or sewer line, that you can still be eligible for that state funding.
Sure. So I understand that but I actually question if communities, are they aware? Are PFAs addressed at all in the region planning processes that are currently going on? And I admit I have not had time to be a part of those, and mine hasn't come up yet. So is that discussed? Are they aware of what it is? Are they aware of what it means? And do they have the opportunity to speak for or against being in a PFA? Specifically, why would Turkey Point be in a PFA? Why would they want to continue to be in a PFA?
Go ahead, Christina.
Well, I mean, I would have to look into the Turkey Point situation, but certainly all of our long-range planning documents, especially the GDP and the region plans, reference the PFAs, and it is discussed because it's a big driver for how land use happens in the state of Maryland.
Yeah. So, I think my points and my concern continues to be places like, you know, the Mayo Peninsula and other peninsulas that may have originally come, you know, achieved their PFA status due to sewer increases or, you know, improvements needed, very important for our health of our water and our waters in our bay, but now it is viewed as this is a growth opportunity, the continued growth opportunity. And that's where I'm at. That's why I'm asking about in the region planning process, if a community doesn't want to grow in density, and it's not environmentally beneficial for them to grow in density, do they have the opportunity to speak to that and to adjust as, you know, if they choose? I'm not.
Well, this is Christina Pompa again. So I'm not sure that taking a property out of the PFA would be advisable. What you're referring to on the Mayo Peninsula is that undeveloped lots that maybe would not have passed a percolation test for septic now are developable because sewer has passed by. And so I think the question is, what do you do with those infill lots? Because typically each lot is going to come with some development capacity. And there are a lot of financial considerations for making those decisions. Now, the region plan, as far as infill lots, I mean, the Mayo Peninsula region plan hasn't started yet, but it is something that could be evaluated and a recommendation made. And then, you know, the feasibility of that recommendation would then have to be vetted to determine whether or not implementation would be feasible and possible.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Christina. I think that's all. I mean, I see areas like the Parole Town Center is in a PFA, and that makes complete sense to me, right? Of course, that's, you know, where we're trying to, seems to me like focusing those in the transit-oriented development and where we want density is certainly desirable. So thank you for all those clarifications.
It is an issue because you do have existing developed areas in the county that are currently served by septic that over time may have to become served by sewer because of environmental issues. And that becomes a much larger issue if there are vacant lots. I worked in Queen Anne's County many years ago, and there were two developments that the health department said, you know, we need to serve with sewer. They were served with sewer, and there was a huge building boom. But one of the things the county did in that instance is there were many small lots. So a lot owner could own, let's say, 3 lots in a row, 4 lots in a row. If the lot owner, they were encouraged to combine their properties to only pay to buy one sewer allocation. But if they didn't want to do that, they were going to have to pay for sewer allocation for each lot that they owned. So there are ways that you can take some of that land out of development, but the sewer project also has to be financially feasible. But it's actually an issue in the county, I believe, in the future for more than just, for instance, the Mayo Peninsula.
Agreed. Sure.
So Christina, I have a question. So going forward with Two Rivers, since they will now be in a PFA, do you go back and revise the numbers retro back and all those numbers are changed, or just the new permits that would be issued from here on would be in the PFA?
I think that's a great question, because I actually thought about that today. I was like, And to me, I mean, the PFA wasn't in existence in calendar year FY21, so you're going to let that stand. But you're going to add narrative detail in future annual reports that talks about the transition and how that has impacted the numbers.
Okay, thank you. Board members, any questions? Dawn?
Yeah, this is sort of, I think you touched on an answer to my question, but my question, which really is about how does a development get approval if it's not in a PFA? So it sounds like there are incentives. You mentioned, you know, grants, and there are certainly incentives to do it, but does a development have to do certain things, or how does it get that approval?
Typically, if you're outside of a PFA, development is still permitted, you know, at the density allowed by the zoning. Generally, if you're outside a PFA, you will develop on private septic and private water, meaning each lot would have to have an individual private well and an individual septic system. That in and of itself reduces density because septic systems on lots, number one, for a new lot to be developed, you need room for the existing septic system and 2 replacements. So that's why I think you see less of those, because you have to go through perk testing with the health department to ensure that you would, you know, pass a percolation test. But yes, development is still allowed outside the PFA.
Thank you.
And the reason why there's so much focus on the PFA in this report is that's how the state wants us to break out how the permits are issued, whether inside or outside the PFA.
And I want to piggyback on what Mark said. Obviously, we do this annual report because it's required by the state of Maryland. They take all of our county numbers, they roll it up into a report with the 22 other counties plus the city of Baltimore, and that goes out every year. So they have the data that goes into the report. We just can't tell them anything we want. We have to meet their requirements for what they're looking for. And obviously the PFA is a state program, so they're very interested in it.
Very good. I know it's a lot of work and it's very informative, and every year it's really good to see the summation of all the numbers in a complete total, because it does help and you can see the growth. It's amazing since what, 1970 to 1921, the county has doubled in population. Yeah. So, okay. We're going to need to make a recommendation, doing a motion that we accept the annual measures and indications report as presented. So I need a recommendation, a motion.
Recommend to accept that report.
Okay, well, we have a motion to accept the report of the annual measures and indicators report as presented. Any second?
A second.
Okay, we have a second, so we'll take a vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? The motion has been approved. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine and Mark, for your presentation and answering all those questions. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's nothing else on the agenda. We're about done. Do board members have any questions or comments? Anything left?
Mhm.
No, I do want to thank Melanie. I know that you had a lot of concerns, and I do thank you for putting those questions before the board prior to this evening, because it gave everybody the ability to think and also create any questions that they may have. So that was very helpful. So thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
So I'm going to turn the floor over to Michael. Michael, tell us when our next meeting is going to be.
Yeah, yeah. We need to firm that up still with the next big agenda item in front of you is going to be the review of the update to the pedestrian and bike master plan, walk and roll. Office of Transportation is still working through public comments they received through their public comment period back in September, October on that. So we're still trying to pin down when they're going to be ready to move forward. So we'll email you about the next date for that. It certainly won't be, you know, the pre-Thanksgiving meeting. So I think we'll be okay to cancel that one. So
Sorry, just to clarify, so it's not the 16th?
at this point, I don't have a firm date. It's not going to be in November, guarantee that. And I'm pressing them to try to get us a date as soon as they can.
Thank you.
I know holidays are coming up and that's tough for everybody. And then of course, you're on the horizon too. After that will be for the new year, we have our big meetings to review capital budget. So we'll be reaching out to set those dates. They're typically 2 Fridays in February. So we'll get holds on your calendars soon for those.
Okay, thank you. Jessica, anything admin that we need to go over?
Not at this time. Just be on the lookout for those updates on the capital budget dates.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, all board members. I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye, this meeting, any
Aye.
nays?
Aye.
Okay, motions are passed. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for your participation and comments.
Thank you.
Good
Thank
evening.
you.
Guys,
Have
good
a fun.
you.